This podcast was produced by OAR FM Dunedin with support from New Zealand On Air.
At Rāroa, we do two things. We have an approach where we have no single point failure. So no one person is holding their little universe in its entirety. There will always be a person that could always step into that place, whether it's within a team, whether it's a teaching team, whether it's an admin team, whether it's our senior leadership team. There's nobody that can just walk away. And the other one is when we do see signs of work stress, straight away it's a sense of let's take stock and prioritise what you've got there, what is needed, what's urgent, what is what you feel like you need to do. And a lot of those challenges we have to recognise that when a teacher is struggling, it's often, and for us, the majority of those ones that it gets to that point of stress is that when there's something else happening outside of their life. Yeah. Because they want to handle school and they can handle and they've got the strategy to go there. But it's just trying to provide and that's that no single point of failure. It's okay to reprioritise and think because we've got your back.
Hello and welcome back to Making Work Better, the show that reminds you it's time to stop fracking human resources and to make work humanly sustainable. I'm Denise Quinlan, and today's episode is a deep dive into what it looks like when a school takes wellbeing seriously, not as an add-on, but baked into the way they operate. I talk with Stephen Eames, Principal, and Matt Boucher, Deputy Principal from Rāroa Intermediate, a school that's rethinking pastoral care and redesigning systems to genuinely support both staff and students. This is an inspiring, practical conversation about leadership culture and how to banish burnout before it even starts. I began by sharing with Stephen and Matt some of the challenges that I'd identified in the Making Work Better survey of burnout, wellbeing and resilience, uncertainty and change, workplace culture. These were the things people were telling me they were concerned about. And I asked Stephen and Matt if that corresponded to their experience of education.
Education in its entirety or education at Rāroa?
Go on, do both.
Because I think for me there's no surprises as such to those results. And the things that were coming up there around from the pressures of what a school's like are very valid. I think you'd have similarities, and that's what you hear across the sector around the demands that are placed on teachers at the moment and staff. I think, and if I was looking at it from a Rāroa point of view, the challenges that people are having is definitely getting the life work satisfaction as such within an environment that has such increasingly complex needs for students. Yeah. Over and over again, when we sort of look at and have conversations with teachers, that's what they're talking about. There's so much to deal with in a classroom now that leads to some of those results, whether it's exhaustion or it's just a feeling of overwhelmingness. Because I think alongside, when it comes to here, and what our teachers are articulating, yes, you're increasing complexity of needs, but alongside that comes the pressures that come with that. For instance, the higher there seems to be a higher expectations from parents now for those complex needs. So that's one side of the equation, which comes with increased communication, increased emails, increased need to have the attention on individuals. But then there's the other side where there's a lack of parenting or little or no parenting, it seems. So the flip side of that is consequences such as students' lack of sleep, diet, digital overload. So you can see the result of those factors having a big impact on teachers.
And it doesn't matter which way they're going. And I guess what I would say is I think we're seeing this feels like the logical other side of the picture from the workplace picture, in that in the workplaces, what we're seeing is a move to an always-on culture where these parents as workers are expected to be always available, answering emails, answering phone calls, checking messages at any time. And And so they have that expectation that they can do the same to teachers. Yeah. And or the consequence of being less available to their kids.
Absolutely. That sums it up nicely, because that's in the school setting with the kids, but a lot, because you've just alluded to that fact that alongside the complexity of students in the skin and the way in which parents are working, there's all the political pressures and society issues that are almost falling on the school now, whether it's from poverty or job insecurity or illness. A lot of the onus of that and the solve is coming from schools, where we have to deal with those external pressures coming in.
And in that context, I think the words that you used before, the enthusiastic but ineffective, I think those go hand in hand. Teachers are being challenged with having to deal with all of society's issues as they come in our door, tackling inequity, tackling neurodiversity, all of those things. And teachers are very enthusiastic and passionate about what they do, but these are not challenges that they're prepared for or trained for, and it's not challenges that they easily can face while managing everything else that they're doing. So I think that contributes to that feeling of being ineffective, which is really important for teachers, actually. And I think has led to a lot of teacher burnout, or just sort of anecdotally knowing that, often teachers, not so much at Rāroa, to be honest, but at 7 schools that I've worked at, have, taught for a year or two and then burn out and leave. And a lot of what they express is not in that word, but feeling ineffective. I've called it teacher guilt in the past, I had a bit of a campaign against it, because teachers spend the day having poured their heart and soul into what they're doing. But there's some of these problems that they just can't do it all the time. And they need to have some kind of assurance of, what can I do? How do I do it? And also, what's a reasonable expectation here? How can I sleep at night knowing that I did my best with X, Y, and Z issue, not have I solved, societal problems, or have I changed this child's life today? But teachers take a lot on themselves, and I hear that quite often.
And that's the recipe for burnout. You take it all on, and then you end up feeling completely ineffective, which is a symptom of burnout. And I'm really interested that you say, it's what's the boundary, because we've been talking in our work since about 2020 about ruthless prioritization. And this year I said, and we have a Venn diagram of the stuff that matters and the stuff that you can control, and saying you've got to focus on the stuff in the middle. And this year I've said, we need to move to radical prioritization. And that is going back to good old Mr. Venn, I think, and saying every Venn diagram exists in a rectangular universe. And in this case, the universe is what is humanly sustainable, what's possible. We can't keep making lists of, we've got to do, these are all the most important things. It's got to be, and what's achievable, what's actually feasible for a human being to do on a sustainable basis. And I think that's the bit that's kind of falling off the radar a lot of the time.
Yeah, there's a lot of that. There's the idea of prioritization, and also is a huge one for us. We've sort of looked at the ways in which we can. This is not going into the nuts and bolts, but prioritization is a big one for any person at Rāroa. We do 2 things. We have an approach where we have no single point failure. So no one person is holding their little universe in its entirety. There will always be a person that could always step into that place, whether it's within a team, whether it's a teaching team, whether it's an admin team, whether it's our senior leadership team. There's nobody that can just walk away. And the other one is when we do see signs of work stress, straight away it's a sense of, let's take stock and prioritise what you've got there, what is needed, what's urgent, what is what you feel like you need to do. Because it is, you're absolutely right, that is something where you notice if things are getting too much for an individual, you need to act quickly.
Just that one you've mentioned of saying no one's a single point, that there's always someone backing you up who can step in. It's sensible from a systems perspective, but it's also hugely sensible from a burnout prevention perspective and a community of care.
I think it's definitely a community of care, yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So what other people, like for most of us, I think it's the people challenges that are the big ones, whether they are the people you're looking after, the students and their whānau, or your own staff. But what people challenges would you say are most important for Rāroa or for the sector?
Well, I think for people factors, the biggest one is people are managing their own lives as well as alongside the work.
Yeah.
So you have to, in managing people, you have to manage their lives. Like, things come up all the time in people's lives. There wouldn't be a week goes past that something that could be considered quite tragic in somebody's life has happened to somebody in that organisation. As an organisation, you have to be very aware of that alongside the pressures that the demands of their school. We're doing, as you know, we've done massive amount of work around the wellbeing of our teachers, and we're starting to work towards. This is a piece of work that Matt's leading around what are the actual structures and actions we're doing to alleviate some of that complexity, or put the supports around the complexity so that people are not an island as such. They're not alone. Matt, I can talk a little bit about.
Tell us more, because I think, as ever, I think you're ahead of the game, and I think you are ahead of corporates. Like we literally have been pushing for the last 5 years to go, wellbeing is more than the 3 F's of fruit bowls, flu jabs, and fitness. It's actually your structures and the way you work. And what you're saying about no single point of failure, that's a systemic level approach. So I'm really keen to hear more, Matt. Sorry, I'll be quiet.
Yeah, it's all good.
Oh, great. I mean, I think what Stephen outlined as being the thing that's top of mind for us is causing the most stress for teachers in their job, and is actually related to the well-being of the students. So it's all the pastoral care stuff that comes up, and sometimes that's behavior, sometimes that's dealing with mental health and family issues. Sometimes it's dealing with the neurodiversity and different learning needs in the classroom, and that's the stuff that's on the rise. So we're trying to take a systematic approach in order to help support teachers to do that. And I think it really relies on teachers feeling prepared, being confident in what they're doing, and being supported to meet those challenges in the classroom. We can't take them away. What is being thrown to us in the classroom is new for us, but it's something that's out of our control. It comes into the doors, and we have to figure out how to best deal with that in the classrooms and as an organization. So it's about building teacher capacity, giving them a framework to follow so that they can feel confident they're doing the right things, but also have support is the term we're using, but also we have this system we've developed of advice, support, or intervention. So that at what level do you need some outside assistance, and we can provide that in different ways. So we've got a bit of a framework that we've built that's looking at all the student needs that are coming into us, and learning to all speak the same language so that we can look at what we're noticing with these kids and classify it accordingly. So we have like level 0 kids, our kids that we know has some risk factors, and maybe things have come up at previous schools. We're not seeing anything yet, but it lets us be in a proactive space and know who those kids are. All the way up to level 1, 2, 3, 4. So kids who will need some extra support in the classroom and extra relationship building, kids who may need a bit of a plan across the whole team, kids who may need some support with our couple of wellbeing teachers. So we have one that does 2 days a week with groups and social skills and that sort of thing, one that does one-to-one counseling. None of this we're funded for. So this is, we found the money because we know that it's so important to what happens in the classroom. And at each of those levels, this framework has got like a little bit, and this has been over the last year that we've developed this, and now we're rolling it out and changing it as we go. But it's got some descriptions of what that might look like for different kids. What are the things you might notice in the classroom? Who do you talk to? Who can you seek advice for? Who can you expect support from? Who might intervene and in what circumstances? Some resources on what you can do to, proactively help support those kids at each of those levels. So it's a little bit, even though it's something that's fundamentally not paint by numbers, which is student well-being, it's attempting to make that a little more systematic. Because the sense we often get with all these things popping up, and especially with teachers not being able to necessarily pick what's serious, what's something I could deal with small, am I doing enough, is that big teacher guilt question, that this at least lets them look at it and go, okay, I know where to start, I know what to do, I know what I can go, yep, I've done enough on that one, I know who to go to if I'm not sure, I know who to ask advice from. So we're already starting to see that teachers are feeling a lot more confident because they have that, rather than the sort of lolly scramble of issues you don't know how to deal with that has been the case up until now. This
is massive, because you're creating a known universe. Because an enormous part of the stress is feeling there is stuff coming at me. I don't know what it is. I don't know how to categorize it. I don't know how to respond to it. Yeah. And by saying, here's the universe of what we're seeing. Here's a way that we are categorizing it that makes sense to us. You can just feel the hurly-burly settling down, can't you?
Yeah, and it's also by each of those levels we've put in that framework of the advice, support, intervention is really important, because it kind of says whose responsibility is it to deal with the issues that are coming up at those different levels. So if you're seeing certain things, you go, this kid's a level 3, I actually should be getting an intervention from our wellbeing teacher, and they should be getting individual counseling. I know this is a 1, this is probably mostly something I need to do within the classroom. But then because we have that differentiation between advice, support, and intervention, if it's like a level 1 kid, so I know, got some idea of what this is, really it's something I need to deal with in the classroom because it's relatively low level. I probably am not seeking an intervention from anybody, but advice is a totally different thing. I can go ask advice from the deputy principal. I just can't expect an intervention from the deputy principal at this level. Right? I can go to my team leader and ask for support, but it might not be. So you can always ask. You can always go to people to get some better ideas. But again, it's quite clear on who should be doing what, which as a systems thing across the school ensures equity. But for teachers, it's just a thing to hang your hat on. Cool. I'm doing the things it says. I'm pretty sure I've had a chat with the DP looking after my team. I haven't solved it. I'm maybe not going to solve it this year. But I know that I'm doing everything that I can reasonably expect it to be doing, and I feel confident that I'm doing the right things.
I'm so excited because you're reminding me of my favorite piece of work in the last 12 months that I've come across, which is from the States. It's a 5-year field trial over 1,000 IT professionals in a company no one ever wanted to work for, and they fundamentally reduced stress. One of their senior people said, who'd had a heart attack beforehand from stress, said, this company is generating 100% less stress now. And what they did was essentially they gave people more autonomy over how, when, and where to do their work. And they sat together and looked at what's causing the hassle, what's the low value work, how can we reduce it? But essentially turned chaos into a known system and had approaches for dealing with it. Gave people a whole load of empowerment, gave them supportive framework, said you choose what meetings you go to. You're the person who decides, we trust you. And as well communicating care. Interestingly, in this setup, one of the only things they had to teach the managers to do was how to communicate caring for the employee's life outside work. Now, I think none of you need that training, but it's about turning an always on and overwhelming load of work into something manageable with a framework, and then saying, and here's the support we can offer. And like you say, even if we don't have an intervention for you, there is advice. I want 2 questions. One is the feedback. But first of all, before that, how did you decide to do this, and how did you come up with this approach?
So it's been a long time of slowly, deliberately building this. So we spent pretty much all of last year, myself and a team of the wellbeing teachers, basically running it and trialing it of the three of us before we've rolled it out to staff and all of that. So, minimum viable product and testing it out and changing things as we go. I guess when I first started at Rāroa, I've been here just short of 2 years now. One of the things that really attracted me to Rāroa, and I know is the case with a lot of people who are working here, is the focus on well-being. And what I think is quite a shared philosophy about how do we approach, both, the well-being of teachers, but also how do we approach students? Are we a school that is looking at relationships with kids, is looking at, addressing the whole child rather than, the old school sort of way of dealing with things, punishment and all of that kind of stuff. So I think that's really good. And with all the frameworks that we have around teacher well-being as well, like everybody's in the same waka, we've got the same values there. But sitting along shared values has to be an action plan. And there has to be a lot of systems and structures that are in there in order to make sure that gets embedded, especially into the most difficult work that we do. And that's something that we noticed was that even in those couple of years, which, is post-COVID and everything like that, which people have commented on, has also seen a bump in some of the anxiety and low-level stuff that we deal with. Yeah. It was clear in our role as the three DPs who look after the pastoral care, and helping the teachers to deal with all these kinds of things, that they were very quickly being overwhelmed. And that very quickly led to their team leaders being overwhelmed and led to us being overwhelmed, so that it felt like it was that disorganized running around, putting out fires, which I think we learned to do quite effectively. We certainly cared about what was happening with the students and tried to offer as much support as we can, but it wasn't systematic. And so that got a lot of talking to, how do we make sure we get the help going to the kids who really need it? A, because they're the kids who really need it, but B, because that's the biggest problems that are either coming up all the time that teachers are dealing with, or that are ticking away like a little time bomb that if we don't do something proactively are going to hit them. So that was the idea with this, was that actually much of this does need to be dealt with by teachers in the classroom, all the lower level stuff. So that's a need to build capacity. Some of the higher level stuff we couldn't expect teachers to deal with, family violence. That's not a thing that teachers can deal with. But it is something the school can help to facilitate. Yeah. But we just need to know, who are those kids? What are the signs? How do we know that's happening? Who actually goes and does that? So it was just about trying to make sure that we could be as effective as possible, but needing that systematic sort of approach. And yeah, I really, that's one of the things we really learned from it, was that if you're going to do it, it needs to be done very slowly and very deliberately, and in collaboration. So that team of myself and the couple of wellbeing teachers who developed this last year and then rolled it out to the staff at the start of this year has now widened out to include at least one team leader and a couple of classroom teachers as well, because now we're in sort of phase 2 of the whole school is using it. So let's get feedback. Let's see what we can change as we go. Let's see what needs to be tweaked. But also part of that framework is having a collaborative team, and that should always be the case, because that way we're always getting teacher feedback, leader feedback, and we can plan, professional development that's responsive to what the trends we're starting to see in the classroom and all of that. So it's structures that doesn't become an artifact. We're not making a framework that goes on a wall and we'll call it a day, but part of the structure is it being sustainable and something that we continue to put mahi into all the time so that it lives and breathes.
That's lovely to hear. There's behind the scenes there. I think that one of the things that when Matt came on board, we did quite a large restructure of roles and responsibilities. Like we looked at and we looked at because that was from staff. One of the things we did was around staff feedback and access to support. We had to do a little bit of a rearrange of how we do things. So there's always people know who their line of communication is and who are caring for them and who's doing their coaching, who's doing their pastoral care. So because it's something they were looking at, it's fine to have a distributive leadership model, but people need somebody who they go to develop. But alongside that, and I was just listening to that, is when we did that, teachers don't necessarily want somebody to save them every time. They want to be able to be equipped, to be empowered, to be able to solve the situations themselves. So they want to do the best. And in many cases, they are actually the best person. Like as soon as a DP or the principal steps in, they're taking away, they're disempowering the actual teacher or the leader. So a lot of what we had to do is we had to work on what are our strategies and what are our pathways and what does it look like, so that, as you say before, so that you're actually providing systems and structures, but wherever possible, you're stepping away. So it has different actions and different approaches to a scenario. Every time everything comes up, you have to sort of almost go a little mental checklist to yourself to realise who the best person to deal with this and how do you empower the environment so everybody is dealing with it. So that sort of went on, was a prerequisite to the work that Matt's been leading around the pastoral care framework.
Honestly, you guys, it's so lovely to hear this. And I want to say this has all the hallmarks of the Rāroa I know and love, of deep thinking, not following anyone else's path, going, what's our issue? What are we facing? How can we best deal with it and solve it in a way that meets your shared values and is systemic? And when Stephen said, we've been working on pastoral care, I kind of thought, oh, hasn't everyone else been doing pastoral care for decades? What's new about that? And now I go, okay, I get it. This is staff well-being supported by a systemic approach to the burgeoning need that's happening in classroom.
But also we have to recognise, Denise, that the only reason that we could evolve to the situation we have is about the fact that wellbeing has been such a huge part of our kura for a long time, with that framework of positive psychology. We always said that our teachers have to be the best people to be in front of their kids to deal with the demands. That goes a long time. And as that approach evolved, we are in a really good place for people to be empowered and take on challenge. They're the teachers here are in a really good place to move forward. But that has come from concerted effort around wellbeing. And this is the natural next step, because what happened with that, and you would have found that in your conversation, is sometimes there's the concept of well-being too far, that people misconstruing it or not understanding it or not linking it back to scientific approaches. So we need to make sure that, one, we sustain that understanding of what well-being is to look after ourselves, but it's also now it's about delving in as what can we do with that environment for the better of everybody in the environment now. And that was now we need to move this to a field where we're actually providing support measures so that people can actually concentrate on their well-being. So it's a natural progression, because you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
Pastoral care is nothing new, and it's nothing. But if you frame it with this and frame it with as you talked about, is preventing or putting things in place to minimise stress and burnout.
Yeah. Alongside
a really strong school wellbeing culture, you can see how they work together.
Because I think that's been one of the challenges with pastoral care, is that it has been almost defined as a one-on-one rather than a building capacity in every teacher to recognise issues and to be capable of addressing and supporting them. And that's where this is groundbreaking and good.
Oh, that's good to hear.
Yeah. Oh, honestly, I've had a very big few weeks, and I was exhausted, and you've just actually completely made my day. So thank you. And tell me, what's the feedback from staff been like? Because Matt, this is, this is really challenging, because it's, you've spent a long time doing it and you want to keep it alive and iterating, but you just need feedback too, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, so far so good. Last year was as I said, we had put it together the minimum viable product the year previously, and then last year spent the whole year trying it just amongst ourselves who were directly dealing with some of those kids, so the wellbeing teachers and myself. So that gave us all year to work out all the kinks and things as that happened. But even then, we've noticed amongst ourselves and in talking to other teachers from last year that because we were applying the framework ourselves without necessarily bringing everybody on board just yet, we wanted to get it sweet, but that our interventions were and our help was being quite effective. It's still, there's a lot to deal with, and we can't make all those stressors go away. But we did have a few. I had at least one teacher, maybe two, directly say that if they didn't have all the support that they got from us in the pastoral area last year, then they likely would have left teaching at the end of the year because they had that really hard class with lots of those in there. So that was quite directly, they said that to us. We also noticed that we were finding kids who had bigger issues or needs than we likely would have with a less structured approach. So as far as being able to meet the needs of the kids, that was a lot more effective. And the result of that is the teachers who had those kids in the class were feeling very relieved and supported and happy about that. So, this is the first year where everybody is, and we're 6 weeks in or whatever. So this is the first time that people are consciously using the framework and know about it because they were unconsciously having it used.
As support.
Yeah. So it was really well received to begin with. And I can see already it's helping to shape a lot of conversations. Particularly with team leaders that I'm working with directly. So I had one that came and was feeling super overwhelmed, and it was exactly this stuff, the pastoral stuff, the needs that are coming up, the parent emails that are related to that, all that kind of thing. By being able to use the framework, the conversation, even just in that 15 minutes, went from, oh my God, I've got so many things going on in the class, I can't handle it, and there's to going, okay, well, who are the kids? What levels do they go to? Let's have a look. Okay, if we look at it, okay, a lot of these are level 0 or 1. Do we know what to do? Okay, we do. We actually take it chunk by chunk. And before we know it, we're actually talking about 2 kids that we're having some issues with that I can help to support or intervene. And the others are fine and we know what to do. It just has built up to feel like a very big thing if we don't organize it and kind of tick off what needs to be done. So I'm rambling a little bit.
You're not. It's the what you're describing. I'm just sitting here going, my God, this is the power of it. It's the systematic, analytical framework that helps people have a sense of order and not chaos. And it's the caring support at the same time. Mm-hmm. And too often, I think in education, we do a lot of the caring support.
Yeah.
But that at worst, that's a there, isn't it?
Yeah, and you get that thing where if teachers are, as Stephen I think rightly pointed out, if teachers are being over supported, that diminishes their sense of self-efficacy and ability to deal with the problems and actually add some teacher guilt because they go, oh, I should have been doing this. Why did I have to go? And you didn't. And then you often get the opposite where I get, teachers' aides or teachers who will, you don't hear for many weeks until you hear about how, things have really hit the fan, as it were, but they're really hesitant to come and talk to you because they feel like they're the ones who should be handling this and I shouldn't go to ask you to deal with it, that sort of thing. This takes all of that out of there. It's really quite easy to just go, okay, yep, this is about a 3. I should get some help from my team leader and maybe talk to the DP if I want some advice. So.
And a lot of those challenges, we have to recognise that when a teacher is struggling, it's often, and for us, the majority of those ones that it gets to that point of stress is that when there's something else happening outside of their life.
Yeah.
Because they want to handle school and they can handle and they've got the strategy to go there. But it's just trying to provide and that's that no single point of failure. It's okay to reprioritise and think because we've got your back. We've got it, you've got the skills and tools because that's where it becomes quite challenging with them managing school and a home situation. Yeah.
And that's most of us at some time, isn't it?
Oh, I've said it's everybody.
Yeah.
And, it's also the well-being of team leaders, senior leadership team, everything else as well. So, we're trying to take all that stress as much as we can off teachers so they can feel that capacity and ability to deal with what's in front of them. But also by being able to triage that and work out, not just we all share the responsibility, but who does and in what circumstances also means that us as a leadership team and the team leaders as well, the things they're dealing with are the things that they really need to be dealing with, rather than catching all the balls all the time and trying to furiously triage as they go. Everybody's doing that along. So that means everybody's a little bit less stressed, including us who would, the 3 deputy principals would sometimes spend a week on end just running around like headless chooks. Yeah. Everybody feeling quite supported, and then us feeling like
wrong out. And what I love is that at the heart of this is building capacity in your frontline staff to do what they do well, so that they know level 0, level 1, I've got this, and I know what to do, and I can recognize 2, 3, and 4, and I know the support, I know I can get advice, and I know that intervention is someone else is going to come in and help. It's you know the obvious question I'm going to ask you next, don't you? And that is, when are you going to show it to the ministry?
We try. When they're in, it's not the lens that they're necessarily interesting, which is phenomenally frustrating. We've put in funding requests, and we constantly say, and we try and get it out there. Not so much, it's just you're right. It's just about attention. It's about understanding the needs and across the sector, but how it can be dealt with and how we can support it. But the big thing comes down to you have to be sort of clever in how you are implementing on a tight budget. Mm-hmm. We have invested heavily in creating an environment that's conducive to be able to put in systems like Matt's been talking about. Like, I don't know, you won't remember the admin block. If you look behind me, like everything from, like, you remember the little pokey offices that were at Rāroa?
Yeah.
It's all, we've just busted down all the walls, we've made it glass, we've made it approachable, we've made, that's all alongside the lines of communication, so that there's more of a collaboration, more of a lighter environment. There's no more sneaking around the corridors or people. There's a lot has gone in to the environment. And so where we couldn't get necessary funding for counsellors and therapists and people working in time, we have been able to manage to get source funds for like property changes or different ways in which we can influence change by being a little bit clever. Because even the environment that, when Matt first joined us, we were all working in the same tiny little office because the admin block was getting redeveloped. He's wondered what in the world was going on, and we were almost ready to strangle each other because we're working so close. But when it reached fruition, you could see the method to the madness in regards to it all helps in being available, being accessible, but also not being over accessible,
approachability is so important in that staff feel like they can come and talk to us, they can be heard, that it's not a big deal to pop in. The place is like a bus station before school because everybody's coming and popping in and nobody feels uncomfortable to do that, which I think is really important. And some of the 3 deputy principals, we got little signs that we have hanging off our desks now that say, what can I help you with today? Advice, support, intervention. So that even frames those conversations being like, I'm just coming for some advice. Great, let's do it.
Even though you weren't funded by the Ministry of Education, I know you're committed to find ways to collaborate and involve people. How did you do that with the pastoral care redesign?
We have, with elements and members of the Ministry of Education, this was some collaborative work done last year while we were rolling it out. So not only did we sit there, the 3 of us, the wellbeing teachers and myself, in the background working away at building this, but we also have a educational psychologist from the Ministry of Education learning support who came and helped to look over that, advise us on different aspects of it, work with us on it. And we also had all of last year professional development around concepts related to it. So we had said that we're working on a framework, though we haven't shared it. But as part of that whole year's worth of work, we did a lot about how do you identify needs? How do you make behavior plans? How do you do emotional regulation plans? Teachers all made their own emotional regulation plans so they can understand how to do that with children. But obviously, that's also a tool for their well-being. So RTLB was on board. I don't know if you're familiar with RTLB.
Yeah.
Okay, so RTLB was on board, and because this was a piece of work that we were doing quite bespoke, as I said, I hate taking stuff off the shelf. I don't mind taking it off the shelf, playing with it, changing it, making our own. But because it was quite a bespoke piece of work with that purpose towards it, RTLB, I think something like 6 or 7 of them turned up every time they were helping to run a professional development session, which was twice per term last year. And that's because they were using it as an opportunity to train their staff in best practice by coming along to the professional development, teaching our staff towards the system. So certainly involved in getting expert advice, if not officially, rubber stamped in policy.
Yes, so not officially stamped, but good people in the system going, we like what you're doing and we want to support you or learn from it as well.
Yeah.
Good.
And it's all very easy, because I think that's where it was fascinating, is that, and the aim is that people have programs, they have zones of regulation, and they have all sorts of programs to actually approach, but nothing like, me, I'm not going to do something that's a package that's going to fit into the school without some really thorough thinking, which Matt complements so well. So they were interested, because we must continually go, well, no, yeah, we get that and we love the research from it, but we want to design something so that we take our teachers. Yeah. How would that work here? Yeah. And how can we bring our teachers along with it? And how can we get a team? So yeah, it was the interest is always the ears prick up from it's like, why won't they take our thing? And then they warm to it, and as Matt's done, is invite more. We'll come along. This is how we do it.
It's also, these things have to be developed grassroots, like we also have a collection of schools through our Kahuiako. And I would love eventually down the track to see that they're using, if not the same system, a system that talks to ours and is a similar sort of thing. But declaring from the top that we're all going to do this thing is a very fraught process, whereas building it very deliberately in collaboration with our teachers, getting the best advice, seeing what works, changing it as we go. Then I've already started talking to somebody who's looking after well-being for the Kahuiako and kind of sprinkled some seeds. This is what we're doing. This is what we're trying. But I think it's got to grow quite naturally outside of a context of a single school if it's going to be adopted wider.
But that's how, Matt, I think, you make it. Your Kahuiako are going, we're hearing some good things from your teachers about what you're doing. Tell us more. And then it's like, oh, yeah, we might try that too. But it's by choice.
Yes.
And then you have a working model of a Kahuiako that's saying, this stuff's good. And there's something and then the ministry isn't taking a risk or putting a lot of money into something unproven. They're getting something that's tried and tested on the ground and going, it'd be crazy not to. So I think, and everyone's working with first followers and people who are keen to be an adopter rather than the ministry one-size-fits-all rollout. So in doing this, what would you say has been your biggest learning over the last 12 to 18 months?
I think from around when you increase your capacity and you're like from a senior leadership point, you increase the capacity and the ability for them to handle quite a range of complex scenarios. The more you equip your senior leaderships, sometimes you end up solving everything. So it's about pushing it back down to equip everybody. I think that that's one of our recognition. I think when we first started going, hey, look, we can't do everything and we shouldn't be doing everything. So what can that's it?
Yeah, I'd agree. I mean, I think the idea of focusing on our capacity rather than problems away or stressors away, building our capacity of how to deal with that and an appropriate response. And it is mana enhancing for teachers. Solving for them takes away from that. Teaching them to do it, but also giving them all the support means that they can feel that confidence.
We've talked about PATH as the concept of diffusion of responsibility. We don't want people just leave things or ignore things or don't deal with things because they know there are people who are better equipped to deal with these things. And so we had to, everybody will step up and be excited about stepping up to handle something. Like there's an excitement about helping or supporting a child or going through a restorative conversation or having a conversation and building a relationship with a parent. We want people to like step forward to the plate as a learning point. Yeah, I want to do this. I want to get that. I want to be able to, I know that they're at this level of the pastoral framework and I want to deal with it. So that's that's a bit of a success, but it's something we also be recognised.
Yeah. And I guess how important and effective it is to do this kind of thing slowly and deliberately and collaboratively without being precious about any given point that you're at, being able to adapt things as you go. Will now be the second year of, we're still in the rolling out, figuring it out sort of stage, and putting in structures that even when we're past the stage of having built and pretty happy with how things are going, that there's still capacity for it to stay fresh in people's minds, for things to change as needed, etc. But yeah, slow, deliberate, and sustainable. If we tried to, we probably could have rushed all this out, putting something in place and introduced it to staff within a term or two, but it wouldn't be nearly as effective as I'm hoping it's going to be over time.
This conversation for the Making Work Better research was recorded in early 4, so I'm really hoping the system is now embedded and proving its worth to all. What are the skills that you most want to develop in your staff and leaders?
I think we've sort of touched on that. We want to equip staff with the skills and tools to enable them to handle both those classroom demands, as well as having support mechanisms in place to upskill them. That's what we want. We want it's the skills to be able to make informed choices. That's the same as when we're doing wellbeing. We want them to have the skills to make informed choices. That's in a nutshell, and having the confidence to be able to.
I really want everybody to have a better sense of confidence, that they know what to do, and that so we can banish that teacher guilt and people sleep at night.
So true.
I love that mission of banishing teacher guilt. I was speaking at a conference over the weekend. Questions that I was asked afterwards was, how do I? I feel like unless I work, I'm not doing enough for my boss. This is the issue of our time. Enough. What's sustainably possible for a human being? What's the value of your life? And how do we put importance on that too? And these are really, really big issues for us as at a societal level, not just at a school level or other workplace level.
That's huge. There's even a complexity to that question around, that alludes to many challenges that we have just going through creating that culture of wellbeing at Rāroa. There's that need to make sure that teachers trust the senior leaders in the school, because it is that trust that will lead to, the making sure they don't have that guilt, but also them not pushing them so they believe that that's what we want, or created expectations that they feel they have to push themselves to so they do not sleep and stuff like that.
What we're talking about is something real in the world of work, which is that we've kind of got our value as human beings, and our value is as a worker. And if you don't prove your worth as well, what are you? And it's how do we actually pull back from that and have. My mission is reconnecting organizations with their humanity, human beings working, who have lives that are far more important than work, and who lend some of ourselves to work for some time. But it's actually really pervasive, and questions like that literally can't see how they could stop working all the time. That you go, you kind of have to answer the question under the question under the question sort of thing.
I think in education, it's particularly prevalent because it is such a people job, and you're interacting with people who, if you're a teacher, you've got these 30 kids there. Yeah. They're your kids that you see them almost as much as their parents for that year. And when we're talking about this
more for some
stuff, Yeah, we're talking about kids who are really struggling and that these teachers deeply care about. And so that, that's even harder to then be able to disconnect from that and go, right, I just need to leave my own life because you genuinely care about these people and they are other people that you're looking after. So it's really easy for that to bleed in. And again, really easy for that to become teacher guilt if you feel like you're not doing everything above humanly possible, I would say, to help support these kids because you truly care. And often we're the only game in town because the mental health services, in the public health system, the support that you get from Ministry of Education, all of that is wildly inadequate for what we actually have to deal with. So teachers know that in many cases the buck stops with them or with the school and feel like, they need to solve all of that because they're so emotionally invested. So how do we separate that of not even just your value as a worker versus value as a person, but your value as a person in the work context versus your value as a person outside of it?
These are hard questions that we actually have to surface and address. Just feeling guilty all the time doesn't.
Right. So how do you know when you've done enough and you've done the right thing, but it's enough? It's all you can. How do you know where that line is? We're hoping to paint that more clearly for teachers. Sorry, Steve.
No, there's no single point of failure. That's exactly right. There's that everybody in the organisation needs to be able to walk away without any repercussions or guilt associated with it. I know that's something that we've developed as the senior leadership at Chai and the leadership team. But for us, there's various points in time that we can stop, completely. I say that and struggle to myself, but but I can.
Yeah. And I think the concept of no single point of failure is huge because what you're saying to every single person in the school is, you're not the only one, because that's at the heart of the worst of that teacher guilt of, if I don't do it, no one else will. And I'm the only person this child has. And therefore I have to lie down and give every fluid ounce of blood,
It was particularly prevalent in our sort of our admin, which is part of our space reconstruction, our leadership reconstruction, and it was also admin office. So that the part of that restructure was about making sure nobody's doing one job themselves. Everybody, and every job description, it has there's at least two people doing each role, and then working out the job description so they can get the most support for each other as a whole team. So part of that was that's one of the changes in the layout as well, is that we just established a role that was, from a principal PA to a senior leadership support person, and what their role is and how they can, when we analysed all the jobs and it's like, what do we do that we shouldn't be doing? And then we looked at who could do those roles, and then what does it look like from a highly functioning executive team, which includes front of office, back of office, and a support for the senior leadership, so that we're looking at different ways of structuring roles, so that as I was saying, is that what are we doing that we don't need to be doing, so that we can invest time in students and teachers. So big piece of work, which wasn't so excited. Which it wasn't actually easy, Denise.
It's not. It's really hard. What you're doing is a full redesign. It's an inclusive redesign with a wellbeing lens that says, first of all, it's 2020 something, not 1850. What do we need and what will work best? So, oh my God, you know what this means? This means that on this basis, Rāroa is the place where we will redesign education next. Because I've been saying this for some time, everyone keeps going, education is broken. And my line is, broken systems aren't a tragedy. Not redesigning them is. I'm guessing that culture, staff attraction and retention, these are good things. Like you've already said, teachers have said, I don't think I'd have stayed in teaching without this program.
We haven't had a single teacher leave through dissatisfaction or being disillusioned. Well, I can say no in the last, since I've been principal. And one of the rewarding things is that they've left because of travel. Travel's been a good, been a lot of people sort of held fire and then travelled. The only other reason a teacher's left is because of advancement. We've got a lot of leadership potential.
I'm so grateful to you for talking to me today and sharing the work that you're doing. It's by far the best thing I have heard from education in the last year. So huge thanks to Stephen and to Matt for their generosity and for sharing such a powerful systemic approach to wellbeing. Their work is thoughtful, practical and deeply human, and offers us a model of what's possible in education and hope for the future. You've been listening to Making Work Better, recorded for RFM Dunedin. To learn more about how you can make work better for yourself, your team or your workplace, keep listening to this series and go to nziwr.co.nz to download your free copy of the Making Work Better report. Thanks for listening today. If you've enjoyed the show, please rate the podcast to help others who might benefit from it find it more easily.
This podcast was produced by OAR FM Dunedin with support from New Zealand On the Air.